Good morning or good afternoon, everyone. My name is Dr. Sinakhokonke Mpanza. I'm a senior lecturer at the University of South Africa. So I'll be doing this presentation on the title an empirical analysis into the relationship between effective stakeholder involvement, variables, and the successful execution of capital project. So this study is based on in South Africa, we have different state-owned organizations that are responsible for capital project. One of those companies is called Transnet. It's a state-owned company. It's responsible for capital project infrastructure in South Africa. So there are different economic zones that are placed in South Africa. There's one in Durban in the harbour area. It's called the National Port Authority. It's regulated by the National Port Authority. There's one in CBER, which is Port Elizabeth, and there are others in the city of Cape Town. So for the purpose of the study, it will focus on the one in Cape Town. So one of the most important things that the study identified that as much as there's so much investment going to this capital project, but there's also like an issue around the execution of this capital project. A high number of them are not completed on time. A high number of them are not completed. So there's lying around infrastructure. So one of the important things as well is that these capital projects, they allow the port to function, to connect the global trade. So you have where the economy interact in terms of economy, global trade. So as I mentioned, that there are prominent ports in South Africa, which is the one in Durban, or there's one in Richards Bay, there's one in Durban, there's one in Port Elizabeth called CBER now, and there's one in Cape Town. But for the purpose of the study, we'll be focusing on the Cape Town capital projects. So the purpose of this article, so it's more an article, is to look at the literature. What is it saying about the different theories? What are they saying about effective stakeholder involvement? But we're looking at the two variables, which is power and agency. So according to a number of literature, is that these variables do have an impact, a significant impact in terms of successfully executing capital projects. And then we move to the literature part. The literature will focus on stakeholder management, stakeholder influence theory, stakeholder agency theory. So as we all know, I'm not going to define what is stakeholder management, but it's very important for stakeholder management is a very important part in terms of executing successful capital projects. So stakeholder management consists of four key categories, which is the members of the team, and then you have the primary stakeholders, and which are contractors and suppliers and secondary stakeholders. But for the purpose of the study, we will focus on the primary stakeholders. So primary stakeholders are those individuals that are directly involved in the capital project. So in this instance, these will be, let's say, engineers, the people that are directly involved with the National Port Authority or Transnet. So this could be also the shareholders of the company, the employees, customers, and the public sector. So remember, the public sector is involved because this is a state-owned company. These are state-owned entities or state-owned companies. So now one might wonder why we have a public sector as a primary stakeholder, because these are regulated or are managed by the public sector. So there's a co-dependence that exists between the organization and its primary stakeholders. So the more you have like hands-on in terms of power. So now I'm linking to the variables power and agency. So if these stakeholders are aware of these factors or determinants, so it will help to to successfully execute some of the capital projects. So the secondary stakeholders are those stakeholders that are not directly involved with the capital projects. It could be any other organization such as the media, the regulators, the inspectors, trade organization, and other special interest groups. So these are not directly involved in these capital projects, but they are form part of. So, and then we look, and then we move. This is still part of the literature. We look at the stakeholders management and process and project processes. And so, a project is regarded as successful if comprising of two components, e.g., the success of the project itself being completed in time within the cost and achieving performance components and client success and user satisfaction. So a project is regarded as successful if comparing two. Oh, it's the same. Sorry about that. So so also the project is labeled as successful or criteria in dimensions such as you have operational efficiency. So this talks about how in terms of the operations such as the budget, like the delivery of the project, the delivery of the project, meeting the budget, meeting the actual budget, and then mostly cost effective. So the impact on the customer, So in this regard, you could remember this is a public entity project. It's not like a private. So the customers in this regard will be the public. So in terms of when these projects are successfully executed, so it has a good impact on the customer, which is the public. So the other dimension is organization benefits are an outcome that is a concession of the business, achieving commercial success as well as competitive advantage. Preparing for the future relates to both clients and the organization. So we focus on these two theories, the so-called influence theory and the stakeholder agency theory. So in the stakeholder influence theory, the most important questions are: who are the stakeholders? What do they want, or how are they going to try to get it? So this helps in asserting where the balance of power lies. Remember, these two variables, power and also influence, are very linked to each other. So the balance of power lies in the relationship between the firm and its stakeholders. So in this regard, when I say the firm, I'm talking about the organization that is involved in these capital projects. So also the type of strategies that can be employed to better manage the resource relationship between the two parties is direct withholding, direct usage, indirect withholding, and indirect usage. And then we move to stakeholder agency theory. The theory aids in explaining and resolving issues in the relationship between business principals and their agents. So as you remember, as a business, you need to be able to identify your own principles and your values, and then also the agent. So you don't have to compromise your principles and values because of a certain involvement with other stakeholders. So it resolves the difference between risk aversion and goals. According to the agency theory studies the problem and the solutions linked to the delegation of tasks from principal to agents where there's a conflict of interest between the two. A contract of agreement should be designed to eliminate or reduce the potential of agent from acting optimistically. So basically means that there should be a well articulated understanding between the business itself and also the agent, so that we don't end up compromising the goals of a certain project or the values of that particular business. So and then now, still part of the literature, we move to the determinants or the variables or the factors of effective capital project. So these determinants of factors is power and agency. So the studies around these two, the variables, power and agency. So So power, what does power mean in a capital project? It means that so there are 6 dimensions of power. So there's coercive power, which is based on physical or force violence, which is not going to be part of it doesn't have any impact in the study in terms of making sure that the certain project are executed or are completed successfully. And then you have utilitarian power is based on material or financial resources. So these are very important. So these are around like budgeting and then any economic forces within the capital project. And then you have normative power, which is based on symbolic resources such as prestige, esteem, love, and acceptance. So in terms of course, looking at the capital projects, this term kind of power is not really applicable. And then you have economic power, so this is the marketplace as a result of the market share commanded. And then if political power is the power gained by political processes or an advantage voting. So in terms of like the capital project, you find that, remember as I said earlier, this is a public sector or a state-owned company. So political influence is very much plays a very big role in terms of some of the project being completed on time within a budget and all that. So political power so is very applicable in this regard. So and then we move to agency. Agency refers to the degree which a stakeholder's claim calls for immediate action. So in terms of like the deadlines and then when the project can be can be completed. So, and then the sense of agency helps as well. So but it doesn't really mean that you compromise the quality of the project, but it means that something is prioritized. Yeah. So it's very important. So it means that something is prioritized, which means that, doesn't really necessarily mean for some, if I say maybe if someone sees agency mean they might think that okay, in the sense of agency, most of the time quality is compromised. It doesn't really necessarily always like that. And then, so in terms of the method, so it's a study we employed a quantitative approach and it used quantitative literature of the study, distributed a survey to the capital project execution stakeholders, targeting about 56 people, the population of 56, and the key execution of capital project. Data was captured and analyzed, and there was interpretation of results and subsequent conclusions to the findings, and recommendations were made to relevant stakeholders. So in terms of methodology, again, the survey a question with close ended questions was used to gather primary data, and the literature review was gathered through secondary data from already existing literature. So the study conducted based on a sample of employees who work in the port terminals in the Cape region, as I said earlier. So remember, I said there's one in Richards Bay, there's one in Durban, there's one in Port Elizabeth, but we're focusing on the Cape region, which is in Cape Town. So this sample included project managers, engineers, procurement specialists. So going back to the primary stakeholders, these are the primary stakeholders. As I said earlier, that so this study will focus on the primary stakeholders. So these are people directly involved in these capital projects. So we have project managers, engineers, procurement specialists, and SHREC managers, risk managers, IT specialists, senior engineering managers, business case developers, senior project execution managers, and terminal executive management at the unit in the region, in the Cape region. So as I said, as I would emphasize that these are noted as the primary stakeholders. So as I said earlier as well, again, that this study will focus on the primary stakeholders, not the secondary stakeholders, because we wanted to get. Do I still have time? 2 minutes, okay. Okay, the sample size approximate is of 56 participants, and then the study utilized factor analysis. Okay, so in terms of the data, in terms of the description statistics, you can see that, looking at the variables like determining excess. So now here we're looking at the first variable, which is power. So and then we have these variables under that. So determining and accessing to power, you can see that mostly participants agreed at 82%. So I'm just going to go to, so you can see the average mean score was at 3.50. So you see that 82% of respondents indicated that have influence enabled the success of the capital project. So, and then also 55% of the respondents agreed that project sponsors are actively involved in project prosecution. 49% of respondents believe that stakeholders take fully responsible for their project, and the response rate for 49% responded consider the organization have adequate financial muscle to support or financial problems. And then 69% of respondents indicated that stakeholders have significant power to drive project success. So these stakeholders, I'm talking about the primary one, the one I mentioned earlier. Let me just move to the next variable before. Yeah. So of course, there's like so much literature around the power and all that, but as you can see that the literature says that there is always influence. Power has influence from the stakeholders, has influence in terms of helping successfully completing a certain project. So you can see that the literature also supports what the data or the findings is saying. So and then we move to the next variable. As you can see, as you can see, that 70% of the respondents indicated that stakeholders have necessary sense of agency to respond to situations that may arise in project. 40% of respondents are of belief that stakeholders take responsibility for the project. 67% of respondents believe that project managers communicate effectively, and 55% of stakeholders believe that stakeholders within the project hold each other accountable and treat matters with a sense of agency.
A second.
Okay.
Okay. Okay, thank you very much for